Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power and Science of Money podcast, brought to you by your boy King Freeze. This week, we're going to be talking about our monetary system because someone asked me about it. Now, I plan on the future in giving a much longer and more visual aid explanation of this because it is complicated. But for this session, I'm going to try to explain it a little bit slower and show how it ties into the things that we've learned previously, right? So let's say you are government, you're the U.S., you have a central bank called the Fed. That's how it works in the United States. We have the United States government and we have the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve issues the money, or they're in charge of issuing the monetary money, monetary supply, right? So you have the United States, you have the Fed. The United States goes to the Fed and says, hey, I need $1. In this case, $1 is 1 trillion, right? So they say, I need $1. The Fed says, fine, I'll give you $1, but you owe me that $1 plus interest. The government says, fine. They take the money, and now they owe the $1 plus interest. Where does the problem come in, right? So let's say in this case, the interest is an additional dollar, right? So you borrow $1, you owe them two, right? Now, how do you get an additional dollar when you have no dollars in existence and you just borrowed everything that you had from the Federal Reserve, right? What do? You have to go back to borrow more money from the Federal Reserve in order to pay off the interest for the previous loan, but that creates more debt. So, right, it just keeps growing and growing and growing to the point that even if you somehow paid off all of the principal, you still owe all of the interest. That system doesn't work. It has a 100% failure rate. It's called fiat currency. It's called a fiat system. That fiat means that the government has declared that this is money, and that's the only reason why it is money. The government could very well say that AC controllers are currency. It's just a declarement by the government that says that this is money, and we honor this as cash, and we will accept this as a mean of exchange, right? So the money that you have, more than likely, every dollar that you have in your pocket has debt attached to it in this monetary system. Now, what's funny is that previously the United States government was on the gold standard. Now, how does the gold standard work, and how does it differentiate from the inflationary system? See, in the inflationary system, you can continuously create money over and over and over. But in a gold system, or any system that ties the dollar to something that is tangible, such as gold, now you can only issue out $1 for as much gold as you have, right? I'm oversimplifying these things again. Now let's say $1 equals 1 ounce of gold, right? If you have 10 ounces of gold, you can only issue out $10, right? Because that's all you have in supply. That's what the United States government had previously, up until like 1970, I believe. That's how it was. You could literally go to the bank and say, hey, I'm turning in this dollar. They would then give you an ounce of gold, or, I'm not saying an actual ounce of gold. In this scenario, they'll give you an ounce of gold, right? And that's how it worked. And that was a better system because it doesn't allow for rapid inflation. There was inflation, but it doesn't allow for rapid inflation. Now, rapid inflation is when the money supply blows up so fast and your money in the bank isn't growing as fast as the inflation, and then your money is worth less quicker. But when it's tightly controlled, to an object that has a finite amount, which means it has a numbered amount, you cannot give out more than what you have, then it controls the inflation. And because inflation is controlled, your money is able to hold its worth for much more longer than it would in an inflationary system, which is what we're in now. They took us off the gold standard in the 70s, back in the 70s. Why? Because we were being pretty kind of shady with the money. We were on the gold standard, but we were issuing out more dollars than we actually had gold in the reserve, in our government central reserve. Because remember, at this time, the entire world was using the dollar as a means of exchange. Why? Because during this time, the United States was essentially the only country on the planet at that point that was working on the gold standard. So that dollar bill was as good as gold. So any country in the world, most countries tied their money to the dollar. That works for us because there's more there's more dollars circulating around the world. It's highly accepted. Everyone trusts that they can then turn that dollar in for some gold somewhere along down the road if they felt like it. And everyone in the world understood that and accepted that dollar, which works perfect. But when people start feeling like, there's more dollars in existence than we know that there are gold, countries start then saying, I want my gold. And then what happens is it's similar to a run on the bank. All these countries are coming and saying, give me my gold, give me my gold, give me my gold. Excuse me. All these countries are like, give me my gold, give me my gold. So the government is like, wow, we don't have all this gold. So we need to cut off the gold standard like now before everyone takes all their gold and we're left with nothing and the entire system will collapse. So they just cut us off the gold standard and said, hey, we're on an inflationary system. We can print as much money as we want, when we want, however we want. So ever since we went on to that system, it's done great damage, and we've quadrupled and quintupled or whatever triple number you want to come up with, that number over time. Since that period, inflation has skyrocketed. Even in the last less than a year, especially after COVID, there's been several stimulus packages that have been put out there. And because they put that money out there, it artificially inflates the monetary system again, right? They send out several trillions of dollars. I think at this point it's maybe up to $4 to $5 trillion. So now that the money supply has inflated by $6 to $7 trillion, if you haven't been properly investing your money or taking advantage of pre and post tax and growing your money and trying to save as much money as you can while also growing it, you may be hurting right now. You may be hurting really bad right now because you're not going to be able to take advantage of some of the opportunities that are out there. Now, as I explained, we have this inflationary system that doesn't work for you. It works against you and it keeps you in debt. Then we had a deflationary system deflationary system that was tied to gold or some other type of precious metal. Mostly it was gold and silver at that period. But now we're not tied. We severed that tie from that. So now we're on this reckless path of constantly spending money, creating money, and then trying to tax our way out of it. That doesn't work. So that's why I took it upon myself on this channel to try to educate people, because I know there are a lot of people out there that do not understand this system. And because they don't understand their system, they think that if they just take money and put it in the bank and let it sit there, that they will be fine. I'm here to let you know you are not going to be fine. Because if that money's not working and creating more money, it's just going to become more useless over time. It's like muscles. It's like if you don't work out, you don't get bigger. You need to have your money, your extra money in the gym, working, getting bigger. Because if you don't, you're going to find yourself in horrible straits down the road. I guarantee that. Last year, I had the best investing year of my it's been a while. In some respects, in some of my stocks, I've 200% return. 200% return on investment. Why? Because I watched the market and I understood that most people do not understand the system, and most people panicked last year because of coronavirus. So they started pulling out of their 401ks. They start selling their stocks. They start selling these things they start selling these things because they felt like the market was crashing. But what they didn't understand is that the market was artificially being affected by this real disease. It's a real disease, but the companies are still sound. It's nothing wrong with the companies. It was that this thing is going on right now. So at that time, I bought these stocks at the rock bottom prices because I said if they at least at the bare minimum return to where they were pre-COVID, I will be good. I'll be fine with that. not only did some of them get back to the pre-COVID numbers, they went further and beyond. And I still think they have way more growth to go. So I'm way ahead of the game. So right now, my money is doing what it's supposed to do. And I want you guys to have your money out there doing what it's supposed to do. And I really need you guys to understand this system, because if you don't understand this system, you can't play the system or play the game better. And this is the point of this podcast or this show, or whatever you want to call it. This is the main purpose. I want you guys to understand the system that you are in. Do not just save your money. Learn how to invest your money and grow your money. I promise you, you will be the better for it in the future, and your future self will thank you. And I thank you guys for tuning into this show. Now, like I said, this was kind of a impromptu episode. It didn't really have like a purpose other than trying to remind you guys about the monetary system that we're in and try to give you a little crash course of a real complicated system. But further down the road, we're going to have the visual aids. I'm going to have more professionals coming in here, and we're going to be talking. We're going to be live streaming. I'm going to have financial guests coming in. We're going to be talking about this system and the best ways to prepare yourself for your future, because you can't work forever. There will be some point in your life where you will need to stop working. And I really want you guys to try to get your kids involved in this podcast, and or at the very least, pass this knowledge on to these guys, to your children, because I promise you, if you do the small little things now, you start compounding and saving now, by the time your kids are 30 and 40, they could possibly be millionaires. And we'll talk about that a little bit more next episode. You know, I always got to drop a teaser out there because I want you guys to come back, right? Because I want you all to get real smart at doing this money thing, because I feel good knowing that when COVID hit, I wasn't worried. I wasn't sweating. I could have lost my job and I still would have been fine, because I did the proper planning before. And I want you guys to have the proper planning as well. And like I said before, this has been the I always get screwed up at the very end. This has been the Power and Science Show, podcast, whatever you want to call it. I am your man, King Freeze. And until next time, peace.